All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day of SaberSim's DFS office hours. Today is Monday, September 22nd of 2025. Looking ahead here, we have some Monday Night Football action as well as some other sports going on as well. So plenty of DFS coming your way. For those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Andrew. I'm one of the coaches over here at SaberSim. This is a show where we go over how to use the SaberSim app, answer any and all DFS-related questions. Get your questions in one of three ways here. First off, send us an email, support@sabersim.com. Second, post it live in the YouTube chat. Third way, post it in the office hours channel in our Discord server. If you're not in our Discord and want to get access to that channel, there is a link in the description of this video. You also get access to our similar channels, individual sport channels, and you get access to the rest of the SaberSim team. Just can't say enough good things about the Discord. But with that said, we do this show Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern, and then we do this show on Saturdays at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. So tune in any one of those days and get your questions answered. All right, looks like we have a very busy show ahead of us today. Had a lot of questions come in over the weekend and this morning. So we are going to get SaberSim pulled up. And we are going to jump right in. So we have the Monday Night Football slate pulled up. Okay, great. First question, is rebuilding too often a detriment to your process? Is it better to make small adjustments at first after your initial build and then stick to filters to get lineups you want? Okay, good question. So I feel like there's two different ways you can think about this. So is rebuilding too often a detriment to your process? So first, I want to answer this with regard to projections and what you're trying to do with taking advantage of the latest and greatest information, right? So for football, we don't actually run that many sims. You know, the final sim for the game is usually around like an hour before the games start, right? After that, the projections aren't going to change, right? So you don't really need to like rebuild, you know, to take advantage of like the latest projections, right? Maybe in a sport like NBA, you see kind of more sims getting dialed in with like some of the news that comes out prior to, you know, the game starting or things like that. Then, you know, okay, each time you're rebuilding, right, you're trying to take advantage of the latest and greatest projections, right? So there's nothing wrong with that, right? That's encouraged. But if projections come out, or like say like starting lineup comes out for like MLB, you don't need to rerun it and rerun it because the projections haven't changed, right? All you're doing is just you know, getting different sims each time you do it, but the inputs are the same, right? So that's one way of thinking about this. Now, the second part of your question kind of leads me in a different direction, where you're saying, is it better to make small adjustments at first after your initial build and then stick to filters to get the lineups you want? So this part makes me think that you're running your build, you're making tweaks to it, you're rebuilding, you're making tweaks to it, you're rebuilding, right? So it's going to depend how important getting to your opinions are, right? If you're like, hey, you know, I want this no matter what, you know, you have a very strong conviction about that decision and that like premise, then like, okay, you know, keep doing it until you get what you want, right? I think some people are, you know, kind of along the lines of like, hey, I'm okay with losing as long as I lose with my guys, right? As long as I lose with my opinions and the things I wanted, right? I think some people like can stomach that like a little bit better. Now, the more adjustments you have to make to get what you want, the more you're moving away from what SaberSim wants you to do. So there is that kind of crossroads you come to where you're like, well, if I keep going down this path, I'm going to keep moving further and further away from what the SaberSim baselines want me to do. That is a, you know, decision that you need to like intentionally make and ultimately like be okay with, right? We wouldn't recommend that, right? I'm not going to come in here and like, yeah, you know, just keep changing it, right? Because we put a lot of work into our models and our sims and the portfolio and everything that gets you the lineups that it gets you, right? We're like, hey, these are the best lineups to play based on these inputs, right? The question really comes down to, do you think your inputs, your own inputs, your custom inputs, whatever, your own opinions or research are better than what's provided. And sometimes, you know, I think there is opportunity to add value, right? Or like take shots on different situations where maybe there's not that much data, but you heard something or you read something and it really like made a lot of sense to you. Then okay, you know, account for those things for sure. But just do it very intentionally. I think that there is a point where like say you boost a player's, say you get like 10% of a player, right? Exposure wise, actually going to do better, right? And maybe you bump him up 2 fantasy points. Then maybe you only get like a really small change, right? Maybe you have like 12% now. Well, what you did was you gave SaberSim a new input and you're like, hey, what if this guy does better? And then you let it analyze it. It's like, well, if he does better, I think we should only have like this much more. But maybe you wanted, you know, 20%, 25%, and it didn't give you that, right? So then it comes down to, okay, what matters more? Do you think you gave it the right input to analyze and you should just accept what it gave you? Or are you really, really set on having that 20, 25%? And then at that point, you should just set a minimum exposure, right? So those are all kind of questions that you have to ask yourself and answer. And the answer for everybody is going to be different, right? I might say like, well, I gave it the best input I had, and unfortunately it still doesn't like them. Somebody else might say like, you know what? No, I absolutely want 25% no matter what. And there's no wrong answer there. It's totally personalized. All right. Next question. I have a question. Are the projections and ownership updated in the saved lineups builds, or the favorite builds updated also when I rerun Sims? Okay. So projections will be up to date anywhere in the app, whether it's contest tab, build one, favorites, etc., as long as this refresh projection icon is not green. When it's green, that means there is a pending update with new projections that you are not accounting for. So it's like, I'm looking at this, a sim runs behind the scenes, sim finishes, projections, new projections get pushed to the app. The button will highlight saying, hey, there are new projections. You should click this and update your current build. And then once you update, the projections come into your build. They won't be taken into account for right away. You're either going to have to do one of two things. You're either one going to have to rebuild lineups, or two, you're going to have to rerun the contest sim. So one of those two things will account for new projections that get pushed to the app when you already have a build open and you're already working in it. All right, next question. If I have moved lineups I like to favorites, how do I move those to my specific contest? Good questions. This part's actually like a little tricky. So let's say, you know, I have a pool here of lineups, right? So, okay, I have 10 lineups. I'm just going to sort these by Saber score so we don't have to run the sim. Okay, maybe I'm using like single game Saber score. Oh, interesting. I know what this is. Those are the results from a contest, from the flagship contest last night. That was interesting. And we might just run a new build. Okay. Let's just run a fresh set of lineups here. end cap. So we're going to build some lineups. We're going to move them to the favorites, and then we're going to talk about how to get those lineups in your groups into your contests. All right, lineups are finishing. That's great. All right, cool. So we have lineups here. So let's say I like some of these lineups, right? Maybe I'm playing like a couple single entries. I want to take, some of these lineups and then use them very specifically, right? So I built 10. Let's say I take 3, right? I'm just going to take top 3 here. I move them over to favorites. All right, so when you come into favorites, it's going to look like this, right? So either 1, you need to activate your templates by clicking on them, or 2, you need to add manual lineup groups. Now, even when you do that, right, the lineups aren't going to be here because we haven't run the sim or diversified. I find it easier. You don't need to re-sim or re-diversify in favorites. You've already done that in your, build 1, and then you pick the lineups you liked, and then you put them in the favorites, right? So what I'll do is I'll just use a manual group, switch diversity to uniques, and then I just change rank by to projected score. And then now that will populate my lineups for me. So if you're adding lineups to the favorites, but then you're going to the favorites and you're not seeing the lineups, create a group, add your contest to your group, or use your templates. And then you could either re-sim and re-diversify. I don't feel that's necessary. It feels like a little bit of a waste of time for me since I already did that. So then I just change this to projected score so I can see the lineups, and then I can just fill them accordingly. Because at this point, I've already decided, okay, I like these lineups. I want to use these lineups in these specific contests or entries. So I don't feel the need to do anything else besides just make my lineups available to be put into my contest. So that's what I would do with regard to favorites. All right, next question. Is there a way to reliably get the live EV to show up? Seems like it just randomly shows up and there's no rhyme or reason. Okay, so with regard to like live leaderboard and stuff like that, the big thing, there's kind of 2 things here, right? Number 1 is waiting until all the games have locked. And I would say giving it like 20-ish minutes. Like I would expect to see everything by like 5 p.m. Eastern for the main slate on like a Sunday, right? That's like one thing there. 2 is going to be the size of the contest. Some of these big contests, the play action, which is like the $3.20 max, the first down, the mini max, maybe even the flagship, are going to probably not work. And it really just comes down to like the size of those contests. Like we have to kind of manually process those after the slate. And or like usually like the next day, like on Monday mornings, we'll like go in and rerun any sims or post contest sims for contests that didn't finish through like the automated processes. Those are usually the ones with hundreds of thousands of entries in them. So that's one thing there, right? But live leaderboards should work for a lot of the under 100,000 entry contests. So those are like the 2 things that kind of come to mind with regard to like live sim EV and things like that. All right, next question. Hey, Andrew, question for Showdown. What is the best way to create a rule that says no more than 2 kicker/defense in the same lineup things? Okay, what I would probably do, no more than 2. Okay, so I would just do like a group manual rule. Go back to our build here. I would go to rules, add new rule. Question was no more than 2 kicker defense. So then I would just say group manual, use no more than 2, go to edit players, and then I would just kick it. I would pick the defense and kickers from these teams. So Loop and Bates. And you got to pick them in both captain and flex, right? So Ravens, Lions. So we picked 4 in the captain, and then I would go do the same thing. Lions, Ravens, Bates, Loop. save. There should be 8 players here. Primary players 8. And then I would just save the rule, right? And that's exactly how I'd write it. So it'll look like that. All right. Good stuff so far. Keeping it going. Andrew, I heard that contest selection recommendations is back to focusing on effective entrants again. Yes. So in our, latest round of like back testing contests and profitability and, bankroll management and all those things, we came up with some new recommendations. You can find them in Saber School. You go to Saber System. You go to this lesson 3, okay? And you go to about the 6-minute mark or 7-minute mark. These are the latest and greatest recommendations. So set your daily wager. We're not being super specific. Some people still like using the 2 to 5% of your bankroll rule. I think that's okay, but we're being a little looser there. Setting contest filters in the contest tab. We'll kind of walk through this. So entry fee less than $3, effective entrance greater than $3, first place higher than your daily wager, and then sort highest effective entrance first. So what this would look like, we go to the contest tab. All right, so getting ready to enter lineups for tonight. First thing I'm going to do is sort by fee, and I'm going to set this less than $3. Okay, good. Then let's say I'm playing $100 tonight. All right, so I'm going to do top prize, greater than or equal to 100. And then I'm going to sort by effective entrance, high to low. So I would first enter the daily dollar and then the first down. And then I would just continue to work my way down this list. Now I've set top prize equal to 100, which is why all these contests are included, right? But what if my top prize is higher? What if my daily wager is higher? What if I'm playing, $250, right? Okay, well, now that shrinks it, right? It gets rid of a lot of those smaller contests. So now I'm working with this group. All right, well, let's say I play all these, but I still have some bankroll left over, right? I want to play more. What should I do? Well, one thing I didn't do here was actually, that was probably a better thing. Okay, so let's say I'm playing 100. We said sort effective entrance greater than or equal to 300. Okay, so then these are the contests that I'm starting off with, right? Well, what if I'm playing, what if I still have bankroll left? Okay, decrease effective entrance to say maybe 200. Okay, I didn't do much. Let's try 100, right? Okay, didn't do much again. All right, so then what we could do next is lower our top prize, maybe from, from equal or greater than our daily wager, change this, right? And change it to half my daily wager. And you basically keep opening these things up until you get to the point that you need. Maybe I need to open this up to less than $5, right? Okay, that adds a couple of contests here that I didn't see prior, right? $4 3 max, $3 single entry, $3.20 max now comes into the fold, right? So it's starting with it and then loosening it as needed. But the big things you want to focus on: sorting by effective entrance, filtering by effective entrance, filtering by fee, filtering by top prize. Those are like the big things that you want to do, and then open it up slowly. So those are the latest and greatest recommendations. Our team found those to be better than the old profit plan, which is why we updated it. All right, next question. Am I sacrificing EV when I'm adjusting my exposures and filters of my lineups post-build? If I don't have any takes on the slate, is it okay or preferred to run the lineups that are already selected for my contest type? Thank you. Okay, so technically, you are sacrificing some amount of EV by making any changes in the post-build, because every change you make moves you further from what SaberSim wanted you to play. Now, I don't think that means you should never make changes, because I think that's wrong. But what I generally recommend is try and make your highest value changes. And some of the things that you might be feel a little less strongly about, maybe consider letting SaberSim handle those. So what that might look like is maybe you're used to changing like 15 to 20 minimax exposures. Well, maybe you just do like your highest 5. You're like, hey, I really, really care about these 5. Some of these other ones, I normally I would change them, but maybe I'll take my hands off this time, right? Okay, make your most important changes and then kind of leave the rest to SaberSim, right? That kind of goes in line with like the new hand builder, right? It's like, hey, tell us, which players. This is like a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's kind of like along the same like thread, like that like we want like our users to like kind of go down. It's like, hey, tell us what players you care the most about, and we will build you the best lineups around them, right? It's kind of like that, right? Hey, give us your, 3 biggest takes on the slate, and maybe you're, setting a min exposure to this player, and then you're kind of feeding this other player by setting like a max, and then okay, we will figure out all the rest, right? And kind of give you the best lineups that fit those parameters. So I think those things are okay to do. I think it's okay to set filters. I think it's okay to set minimaxes. I would encourage you not to go overboard and just try and focus on your high value ones and let SaberSim fill in the gaps from there. All right, next question. Is there a way to set a rule to have a wide receiver only show up in stacks with his quarterback? Yeah, there absolutely is. So I don't know if this is like more main slatey or like showdown. Feels a little bit more main slate. So I'm just going to go to the primetime slate. This one's in progress, but we can still just use it for the rule. So let's say that if I am going to play Amon-Ra St. Brown, I always want Jared Goff to be in the lineup. Just drawing a blank there for a second. So what I would do is I would go to rules. I would go to add new rule. I would go to group manual. I would say if at least one, change use to if here. If at least one, use at least one. And on the left side, I would put Amon-Ra. Save. And then I would switch over to secondary. And then I would click Goff. And I would save. Now, what this rule says, and I'll move myself out of the way, is if Amon-Ra St. Brown is in a lineup, then that lineup must have Jared Goff. This is how you would guarantee that if a receiver shows up, that the quarterback is also used with them. All right. Good stuff here. This is a 2-parter. I saw like a second part of this question come in. So this one says, if I'm doing the 50K Monday NFL Bomb on FanDuel, 1,000 total entries, 32 max, do you recommend any changes in the settings, or should I just let the sim/diversifier run its course? And then I saw a second part. To add, my first run, I saw almost 70% Mark Andrews and Justice Hill. Would you recommend adjusting exposures? Okay, so this falls into the category of like one of those times where I think it is okay to change things. Now, I don't think you should change it unless you want to. And this is like almost more a question of how much risk, like what is your risk profile as a player, right? Like you see the 70%, Andrews and Hill, and when it feels like too much, it probably is. Because if it feels like too much and they do bad, you're probably going to be kicking yourself like, I knew I wanted to change them, but I just kind of took it. It's less about their productivity, and it's more like, this is kind of why we added like the dollar exposure column where it should be here. Actually, it should be in build 1. Okay, if you guys haven't seen this. Okay, dollar exposure. I have it like all the way on the side. So when you have an entry file loaded up, what we will do is we will basically describe to you, hey, you have this much money invested in this player. Because sometimes percentages or lineups, you know, they tell the story right, but I don't know, just sometimes seeing the dollars, right, feels different. It's like why people say like, oh yeah, like if I play poker, I just sit down at the table and, you know, chips are chips, right? If you were betting, you know, with actual dollars, like you might think a little bit different, right? But people just like see the chips and it just becomes a game, right? Sometimes the percentages and the lineup numbers can just make it feel like a game, but the dollar exposure tells you like, hey, you know, you have, you know, $90 invested in Mark Andrews at captain. You're like what I really want, you know, $90, like kind of gives you that like second kind of input or just another way to describe like what you're wagering. If that dollar amount feels like too much for you, then yes, you know, by all means, lower it. Like that is 100% an okay thing to do. If, you know, you are adjusting, not because you have an opinion about their performance, but more about like, this just feels like too much risk for me, then I'm 100% with you. Like adjusting is the right answer. And that could be one of your, you know, I'm talking about like, you know, your 1 to 5 changes, right? Or like 3 to 5 changes, you know, the things that are of the highest value to you. Lowering your risk level for a certain player or group of players can definitely fit that mold. So it's totally okay to do those things. All right. Jerry confirmed that was a main slate rule. So that's great. Glad we did that. Wayne said, how do people stand a chance playing in the big contests against the elite players? For example, $15, 500K NFL Showdown last night. And do you have to do 150 lineups in those contests to win? Does doing 150 lineups in the big contest with the payouts mean your chances of winning are better? Or is it the same chance even if putting 20 lineups instead of 150? Okay, good questions here. So mathematically speaking, the players who enter 150 lineups are going to just have a better raw chance of winning, right? Say it's 150,000 entries, which is somewhere in the 100,000 range. If you do 150, I think your chances are about 1 in 1,000, right? If you add zeros, so it's like 3 zeros. So 150 turns into 1,500, turns into 15,000, turns into 150,000. So like 1 in 1,000, right? If you enter 7 times less lineups, then yes, your raw chances of winning are going to be lower. Now, that does not mean by any stretch of the imagination that you can't win with less lineups. You can 100% win with less lineups. Happens all the time. What you are doing when you enter less, say you're entering 20. You're entering your best 20, and you are not entering your 21st through 150th best lineups. Because what you should be doing, right, your goal, you enter your best lineup first, and then your second best, which is a little bit worse than the first, and then your third, which is a little bit worse than the 2 that came before it, right? So it's okay to enter less than the maximum number of lineups. I did that last year. I had a win in like a NFL early slate, came in second for like 20,000. I think I had like 10 lineups in 150 max contest, right? It was part of a bigger portfolio of lineups where only entering 10 made sense based on like the bankroll that I was like working with that day, right? Like, hey, I want to play this much. I'm this close. I don't have that many contests left. Let's only put 10 in, right? You can 100%, you can see it across a lot of contests. You could go and flashback and look at them. People win with less than the maximum number of lineups all the time. So you're not at some huge disadvantage by entering less than the maximum. All right, next question. I saw that TrueDFS offers a bundle that includes SaberSim plus their projections. How often are you seeing players use non-SaberSim projections, and could those mess with SimROI plus other post-contest sims? All right, good question. Yeah, we have a number of partners. TrueDFS is one of them. We're partnering with TrueDFS, Run Pure Sports, Ship It Nation, and we've designed parts of the app to work with all of their data, and we're very happy with the way that those integrations work. Now, as far as how using non-SaberSim projections impacts things that you see, like SimROI, like post-contest sims, we'll break those down. So for the pre-contest sim, the projections that you use impact the ROI results. So let's say that here, instead of, we'll just go to Flex to make it easy. All right, so, Lamar Jackson projected for, we'll say 23 points, right? Well, let's say, my projections that I'm using over at TrueDFS, because I signed up with them, have Lamar Jackson at 25 points. Well, that difference in projection gets added in the contest sim. So maybe if I were using the SaberSim projections, I would have come in 10th in the standings in the contest sim. But because I'm using TrueDFS, because Lamar Jackson scores higher according to their projections, well, now I'm coming in 6th place maybe. That impacts the SimROIs because I just made more money. And then that ultimately impacts the lineups which I get in my contest, right? That's kind of the effect that you want to happen, where you're signing up for them because you want to use their projections. Now, as far as the post-contest sim goes, the post-contest sim results will always be using the SaberSim baseline projections as of right now. We've talked about ways of building that out, but the way it's set in stone right now is the post-contest sims uses SaberSim baseline projections. I've always said, kind of as a rule of thumb, you can just assume using custom projections will lower you somewhere between 5 to 10% SimROI. So I say that because I don't want people who are looking in flashback and using custom projections oh, I have a negative 20% SimROI, oh, it's because of the projections. No, that's a little too far off there, in my opinion, to just chalk it up to differences in projections. But if the highest SimROI is around 40%, and you're coming in at 20, 25%, and you're using custom projections or non-SaberSim baselines, I would feel really comfortable with seeing that. We're hey, maybe if I was using SaberSim baselines, I would have graded out a little bit better. Maybe I would have got, 30, 25, 30, 35, right? But because I used my custom, maybe I came in closer to 20%. That would make me feel really comfortable, right? So that's kind of the way I'm thinking about SimROIs and post-contest sims with custom stuff. All right, next question. I've seen in some of your videos that you'll have a tab called field tabs. Is that basically what could be considered a dry run, like a standard optimizer? So we do have field lineups, right? Those are what we run these sims against. So if I go to the contest tab and I go over here to field lineups, these are our various sets of ownership projections / sets of what we predict the fields are going to look like, the lineup constructions, the rate at which the lineups are played in your various contests. Now, I don't know exactly on what all plans you can do this. I know for sure Ultimate, you can pop these out and look at them. So I can click this little arrow. It'll pop out a tab that says field lineups, and then it will show them. I can go in here. I can look, hey, what kind of stacks are being played in the field? The ownership projections, which you see in the build, are just the exposures of the players from these field lineup builds. So I go to the projections, and then I see the exposure for, Zay Flowers and the captain is 15.7. This would be his ownership, right? If we went back to the build, he would have 15.7% ownership in the captain slot. So that's what the field tabs are here. I believe that was what the question was referencing. If it's not, let me know. Next question, what determines a person being considered an elite DFS player? Is that only based on wins? It also seems like luck is involved. All right, good question. So I will say that luck is 100% involved, right? I've talked to really good players, and basically, you know, kind of the approach that like good players take to winning long term is I know I have an edge on the field based on my either historical results, my top 1% finish rates, you know, my post contest sim ROI, right? A bunch of different things can go into why somebody deems themselves good. Now, what I've heard people say is winning in the long term is skill. Winning on any given day is luck, right? You don't know, even if you have a positive win expectation, right? If you've back tested and you know, like, hey, over the long term, my lineups perform better than others, you still don't know on what day you're going to win, right? But you do know if you play long enough that you will win. And that comes down to the law of large numbers, right? Where it's like the bigger your sample size, the more closer to your mean that you're going to move, right? So like if we're flipping a coin 10 times, it's 50-50 odds. But if I do it 10 times, I might get 8 and 2, I might get 7 and 3. You know, there's a little more variance. But if we do it 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times, the results are going to move closer and closer to 50-50, which is, you know, their probabilities of occurring. So like if you're a long-term good player, which is what we promote, right? You know, thinking about bankroll management, thinking about post-contest sims where we play out the slate 100,000 times, right? We're doing that because we want to see if your lineups win over the long term. And, you know, basically it's almost like the more you play, the better your chances are of winning in that scenario. So yeah, luck on any given day for sure. But if you're doing all the right things and you have a positive win expectation, or like constantly positive in contest flashback, then you're moving closer to like that, hey, I'm going to win in the long term kind of situation. All right. What's the biggest difference between using SaberSim on PC and cell phone? I do a lot of my builds on my phone. All right. Good question. So, you know, obviously like screen is a little bit smaller. There's a little bit less space. I know that it's split into like two. It's like a lineup section and like a projection section. We should have tutorials on this. If you go to the help docs, you go to SaberSim tutorials. I believe, let's see. I'm trying to see if we have phone tutorials here. Okay. How to upload lineups to DraftKings using mobile. I would check out this quick how-to section. Again, I access this by going to the right side menu, clicking help, and then this will effectively be like a mobile tutorial where we kind of walk through this here. It's like a 3-minute video walking through like the end-to-end process. So I check that out. You know, obviously screen's a little bit smaller. All the functionality is the same. Sims are the same. Contest sims are the same. You know, building lineups is the same. There's nothing different. Processing power on phones is a little bit smaller than like a laptop or like a PC. So it could run a bit slower. So just keep those things in mind, but all of the same functionality is available as far as I know. All right. Next question. Are the field lineups used to help you determine where to adjust your total lineup ownership? Example, when you filter your pool to something like show lineups less than 170%. I would say no. You know, the goal of the field lineups is, one, to provide accurate ownership projections. So you know at what rates the fields are going to be playing a certain player, how much leverage you have on a certain player, right? Like, hey, if everybody's playing 15% Zay Flowers captain and my build has 25% captain, I can know that I am going to have more shares of him than the field is going to have on average, right? Or vice versa. You have 5% Flowers. Okay, I'm taking a stand against him, right? It allows you to describe the risk of your lineups. And then when you take your lineups and put them in the contest sim, we're your lineups are effectively playing against the field lineups. And we can figure out which of your lineups do the best against lineups that we think the field is going to play. And then that can help you to put those lineups into your contest and hopefully win money, right? So the field lineups are used more in like the contest sim, more to help you determine which players you're going to have positive or negative leverage on, and a little bit less about like trying to set up rules and filters around them. All right. I can for sure say I've been winning more with using SaberSim. That's awesome. Don't forget about our winner circle promotion. It's like a promotion where you can win, free months of SaberSim or free SaberSim gear. If you're not familiar with that, I'll pull it up on the screen after I get this question in here. So we have our next question there. Let me pull that up. Winners circle. So right here, SaberSim Winner Circle. If you're not participating, you can come in here and go down to this rules section here. It'll take you down the page here and then show you what you need to do to participate. But you can win free months of SaberSim, and you can win like gear and stuff like that. So really, really cool promotion that we do, and you can check it out. All right. Next question. How do you determine what sports you play? DFS? Do you only stick to your favorite sports, or do you try different sports as well? So good question. We offer a ton of different sports. Like if you come in here, right, you click the plus. We offer projections for almost every sport here. We don't have projections for college basketball. We don't have projections for CS2 anymore. We do have EPL projections for soccer. We have COD. We have UFL, and then, basically all these other sports here. It's okay to like dabble in all these different sports, and especially like try them out, see if, there's like a new sport that you like that maybe you want to get some interest in. So I think a lot of people start with just playing the sports that they know and then kind of expand out from there. So that's what I would do, is start with what you know and then slowly expand, right? Like if you have a bankroll for NFL and you're good at NFL, don't take like that same bankroll and like apply it to a sport you never played before, right? Start smaller in new sports and then kind of work your way up as you go from there. All right. I think we are all caught up here. Appreciate you guys tuning in. A lot of questions today. Hope I will be rooting for all of you in the Monday Night Football Showdown tonight. So until tomorrow, our next show at 4 p.m. Eastern. Till then, good luck. Take care. Thanks. Bye.